Good evening and welcome to all of you in our second episode of the Uncharted Hooghly Deliberation series. I would first wish to thank Professor Ashish Sarkar for inaugurating our deliberation series on such an high academic note. We believe it has struck the perfect chord on which we can keep harping on. Our sincere gratitude to Professor Sarkar for his fascinating and comprehensive deliberation on our last episode. It is great to see all of you again joining us today to discover yet another uncharted facet of Hooghly. And today we have among us Sri Shubham Amin to take us through the journey of the lost history of Garh Mandaran. Sri Shubham Amin is currently working as an assistant professor in the Department of English, Sri Ramakrishna Sarada Mahavidyapith. He is pursuing PhD at the Department of English, MS University of Baroda. He has published a book and contributed articles on post-colonialism and gender studies in edited volumes. He has completed postgraduate diploma course in Buddhist Studies from the Department of Buddhist Studies, University of Calcutta, and certificate course on Buddhist rock cut monasteries in Maharashtra, organized by Pradaya Heritage Management Services, Sathaya College, Mumbai, and Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center, Colombo. He has published two critical essays on Buddhism in the Journal of the Department of Pali, University of Calcutta, and in peer-reviewed journals such as Nalanda, Aranya, and other commemorative volumes published by Buddhist societies. He has presented papers on Buddhism, gender studies, post-colonialism, and other issues in several national and international conferences and acted as a resource person in an international conference on Buddhism. He is at present an editorial board member of the Nalanda Journal and an adjunct faculty researcher in Asia in Global Affairs. He has delivered invited lectures on Buddhist Tantra in a special lecture session organized by Asia in Global Affairs. Apart from gender studies, his areas of interest are Buddhist demonology, Vajrayana cult, Buddhist iconography and architecture, and vampire studies. He has visited several Buddhist archaeological sites in Bengal, Bihar, Orissa, Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, and Gujarat and made extensive field studies of some of them. As an adjacent area of his workplace, Garh Mandaran was also part of his travel enthusiasm and field study. He has presented a paper on the same in a national conference. It was my pleasure to introduce Sri Shubham Amin, whose passion and dedication to scrape through the surfaces of histories where, though the primary sources may be noisy and skewed, the narratives have become overtangled through legitimizations of the present, and the evidential fractals are at times fragmented beyond reconstruction, but his efforts allow us to keep the hopes high to create alternate subaltern narratives. Thank you for your indulgence, and now I would request Sri Shubham Amin to kindly commence the deliberation. Over to you, Mr. Amin.
Okay, am I audible now? Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, you're audible, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Devanjan Mitra, for your kind introduction. And first of all, I'd like to thank the INTACH Hooghly Chapter. Who has considered me, who is not a professional historian or not even a student of history as such, to speak on a topic which really requires the intensity and the depth of knowledge in that particular subject. And also, I would like to thank all the members of INTACH Hooghly Chapter, and also uh, especially Dr. Antara Mukherjee and Dr. Ramanuj Konar, with whom I have long been associated. এটা একটু এই পার্টটা একটু বাংলায় বলে দিই, তারপরে ইংরেজিতে বরং যাওয়া যাবে। হ্যাঁ, যেটা বলার সেটা হচ্ছে প্রথমত ইনট্যাককে অসংখ্য ধন্যবাদ এবং অন্তরাদি এবং রামানুজদাকে বিশেষ করে ধন্যবাদ, কারণ ওরা মোটামুটি ভাবে আমাকে যখন বলেছে অন্তরাদি যে এরকম গড় মান্দারণ নিয়ে তোকে একটা লেখা একটু বলতে হবে, তো সেটা মানে আমার কাছে বেশ ভয় ভয় ঠেকেছে, এবং আমাকে মানে বইপত্র আমি সচরাচর দেখি না আর কি, পড়াশোনা করি না, কিন্তু এই কদিন আমাকে মানে একটু ভয়ে ভয়ে পড়াশোনাটা করতে হয়েছে আর কি। এবং তার কারণ হচ্ছে যে একটা সমস্যার জায়গা মূলত, যে গড়মান্দারণ এমন একটা জায়গা যেখানে কিন্তু আর্কিওলজিক্যাল এক্সকাভেশন সেইভাবে হয়নি, এবং সে সম্পর্কে প্রাইমারি টেক্সট যেগুলো আমি বিভিন্ন সেকেন্ডারি সোর্স থেকে পেয়েছি, সেগুলো কিন্তু সবসময় অ্যাভেলেবল নয়, বা অনেকগুলোরই কোনো রকম ট্রেস করা যাচ্ছে না। বিভিন্ন জায়গায় উল্লিখিত হয়েছে। এবং তৃতীয় সমস্যাটা হলো যে গড়মান্দারণের যে জায়গাগুলোর কথা আমরা দেখেছি, বিভিন্ন আমাদের যে পুরনো অ্যাকাউন্ট অফ হিস্ট্রি অফ হুগলি ডিস্ট্রিক্ট আছে, তো সেখানেও কিন্তু একই সমস্যা, যে গড়মান্দারণের যে জায়গাটা এখনো অন্তত মানে ঘেরা আছে আর কি, বাউন্ডারির মধ্যেও আছে, সেই জায়গাটাও হচ্ছে এত মাঝে মাঝে একটু জঙ্গল টঙ্গল হয়ে যায় যে সমস্ত জায়গাগুলো যে ভালো করে যেভাবে খুঁজে ঘুরে দেখা দরকার, সেই দেখার কাজটাও কিন্তু বেশ কঠিন আর কি। অ্যান্ড সেটা আমি দুবার গড়মান্দারণে একটা ফিল্ড স্টাডি করবার চেষ্টা করেছিলাম। তো সেক্ষেত্রে আমার অভিজ্ঞতাটা সেরকমই হয়েছে যে ইটস নট অ্যান ইজি টাস্ক। তো যাই হোক, সেজন্য বেশ কিছু ক্ষেত্রে আমাকে মানে মূলত মানে ইতিহাসের ক্ষেত্রে মূলত সেকেন্ডারি সোর্সেস এর উপর নির্ভর করতে হয়েছে। এবং সেই যে সোর্সগুলোর উপর আমি নির্ভর করেছি, সেই জায়গা থেকে আমি নিজে কতগুলো বিষয় ইনফার করবার চেষ্টা করেছি। যে এবং আজকে আলোচনার জায়গাটা সেটাই হবে, যে এই যে গড়মান্দারণের ইতিহাসের কথা আমরা যেটা দেখি, বা যে গড়মান্দারণের কথা মূলত আমরা বঙ্কিমচন্দ্রের দুর্গেশ নন্দিনীর উপন্যাসের জন্য আমরা গড়মান্দারণের সঙ্গে পরিচিত, সেই আহ, গড়মান্দারণ বাস্তবে সেই অঞ্চলের মধ্যে, সেই গড়মান্দারণ যে জায়গা এবং তার ইতিহাস সম্পর্কে সেই অঞ্চলের লোকেদের মধ্যে কি ধারণা আছে, এবং এই যে দীর্ঘ সময়কালে এই যে হিস্ট্রি বা যে রেকর্ডেড ইতিহাস যেগুলো আমরা বিভিন্ন সূত্র থেকে পাচ্ছি, তার কি ধরনের ভার্সন আমরা হচ্ছে লোকাল এলিমেন্ট গুলোতে পাচ্ছি, মানে বা লোকালাইজড ভার্সনে কিভাবে পাচ্ছি আর কি, তারই কিছু কিছু বিষয় ধারণা। এবং এটা খুবই ভালো যে আগের দিন ডক্টর আশিস সরকার উনি একটা ইন্ট্রোডাক্টরি আলোচনা করেছেন, একটা ভূমিকা বেঁধে দিয়েছেন যে কিভাবে আমাদের বিষয়টার দিকে এগোতে হবে বা কিভাবে বিষয়টা নিয়ে কাজ করতে হবে। এবং সেখানে উনি মূলত একটা হুগলি জেলার যে ইতিহাস তার একটা ওভারভিউ দেবার চেষ্টা করেছেন, যেটা খুবই গুরুত্বপূর্ণ। এবং সেই ওভারভিউটা আমিও মোটামুটি সেটাই চেষ্টা করেছি, যে গড়মান্দারণের ইতিহাস সেটা বিভিন্ন জায়গায় ছড়িয়ে ছিটিয়ে আছে। কারণ দীর্ঘ সময় ধরেই গড়মান্দারণের উপর যদি আপনি কোনো বই খুঁজতে চান বা কোনো সরাসরি কোনো গবেষণার কাজ দেখতে চান, তাহলে অন্তত আমার সেভাবে চোখে পড়েনি যে শুধুমাত্র গড় মান্দারণ নিয়েই, তার ইতিহাস নিয়েই আলাদাভাবে কোনো কাজ হয়েছে। যে সমস্ত কাজগুলি হয়েছে একটু বিচ্ছিন্নভাবে হয়েছে, কিন্তু আমি যেটা মনে দেখে আমার ব্যক্তিগত যেটা অভিমত, যেটা মনে হয়েছে যে সুধীর কুমার মিত্রের হুগলি জেলার ইতিহাস ও বঙ্গ সমাজ, এই এইখানে কিন্তু অনেকটা সুধীর কুমার মিত্র হুগলি জেলা নিয়ে যখনই কাজ করবার প্রসঙ্গ আসছে, তখন সুধীর কুমার মিত্রর কাজটা আমি বলতে পারি যে মানে এত মেটিকিউলাস রিসার্চ খুব কম হয়েছে আর কি, মানে হুগলি জেলার উপর কার্যত আদৌ হয়েছে কিনা সেটা বলা যাবে না। তো সেইখানে কিন্তু অনেকটা তথ্য আছে যেগুলোকে আমাকে আবার অন্যান্য বিভিন্ন সোর্সের সঙ্গে মিলিয়ে দেখে অন্যান্য অনেকগুলো জায়গা থেকে আবার ভেরিফিকেশন করতে হয়েছে, করে সেইভাবে দেখতে হয়েছে। সো আই স্টার্ট দ্য প্রেজেন্টেশন নাও। তার আগে আরেকবার আইএম ইনটাকের সমস্ত সদস্য এবং অন্তরাদি রামানুজদার প্রত্যেকে যারা দর্শক এসেছেন, আপনারা প্রত্যেকেই খুব পণ্ডিত মানুষ। আপনারা গড়মান্দারণ সম্পর্কে অনেকটা জানেন, আমার থেকে অনেক বেশি জানেন নিঃসন্দেহে। সুতরাং কোনো রকম যদি ভুল ত্রুটির জায়গা থাকে তাহলে আপনারা অবশ্যই সেগুলো মানে মার্জনা করে নেবেন, এবং মানে ক্ষমার দৃষ্টিতে দেখবেন আর কি, সেটা আপনাদের প্রত্যেকের কাছে আবেদন। সো উইল স্টার্ট দ্য প্রেজেন্টেশন। আচ্ছা, আমি এখানে শেয়ার স্ক্রিন অপশনটা প্রেজেন্ট নাও। ওকে, I think my screen is now visible. Um, that the title of my presentation is In Search of the Lost History of Garh Mandaran, an Introduction. Now, I started with a quote from Michel Foucault from his essay Nietzsche, Genealogy and History. That is, the study of history makes one happy, unlike the metaphysicians, to possess in oneself not an immortal soul, but many mortal ones. And in each of these souls, history will not discover a forgotten identity eager to be reborn, but a complex system of distinct and multiple elements, unable to be mastered by the power of synthesis. Now, when we look at the history of Hooghly district, we were actually talking about the history of Hooghly district in the last discussion. And the problem is that whenever we try to chart the history of Hooghly district, our focus was principally upon the colonial period or the period which immediately precedes the British colonial period. Now, the fact is that this whole after colonialism, the study of the history of Bengal, there was this particular idea which was being consciously generated by the colonizer that these settlements where they settled first, for example, in Hooghly on the western bank of the river Hooghly, so that was where the modernity started. And before that, there was not really a history, so to say. So the pre-colonial history was deliberately silenced in the colonial accounts. So whenever we try to look at the history of Hooghly district beyond the colonial time, or when we further go back to the pre-colonial time, we always encounter two problems. Number one is that the lack of proper excavations, and number two, the availability of the primary texts that really present the history of these regions, which actually goes far beyond the quote-unquote prosperous time of the colonial period. Now, when we come to Garh Mandaran, but before we actually go into that, I think we must give credit to Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay, because in Durgesh Nandini, what he has done, he tried to bring back the history of a particular region. Now, although the authenticity of his account was interrogated by the historians, and it was actually more or less, there is a consensus among the historians, that his accounts do not really have a historical basis, except the names of the places and some of the other one or two events. And definitely, he did not really claim to be a historian, because what he wrote was a historical fiction, but not a history, a historical account. But what was important, that Bankim Chandra tried to bring back the memories of a place which was forgotten. And those memories are associated with the history which went beyond the colonial period. So now when we look at this Garh Mandaran, which is if you go from Arambagh to Garh Mandaran, which is adjacent area towards Midnapur, you will reach Garh Mandaran. So when you reach this place, Kamarpukur Choti, which is actually the center, I mean, center place from where there are these, on the one way you will go to Bankura, Midnapur. So the roads are being divided into various directions. So when you reach Kamarpukur Choti, you will come across the signboard that Garh Mandaran Hooghly Jillar Porjoton Kendro. So that is being designated as a popular tourist destination in Hooghly. But why is this place important? What is the historical significance of the place? That has not really been hinted. So Garh Mandaran nowadays has been reduced to an entertainment park, a nature park, like some mostly frequented by locals for casual hangouts in winter, because in summer, in the rainy seasons, some of the areas in Garh Mandaran, it's difficult to go over there. So mostly in winter, this place has been frequented by the locals for casual hangouts, or for these kind of people came there, stay for an hour and go out. Now, are these people who are frequenting this area, are they really acquainted with the history of that region? Can we really develop a sense of history that when you actually reach a historical place, for example, when you visit, say, the Nalanda, the Vihara, the Nalanda Mahavihara, or when we actually, say, visit a place like, say, any place like Taj Mahal. So your imagination was something which was really sort of, your imagination was actually being sort of, you begin to feel that you are in the midst of something which is a part of history. But sadly, in Garh Mandaran, there is this dissociation between the history and the present. Those who are going over there do not really consider that they are visiting a historical site. So that lack of historical sense, that is the major concern, that how we have forgotten the history, by which process. So, because first of all, what I say, that this is an archaeological site which is yet to be explored. Now, I have got the reports of 2 archaeological excavations, and when we actually, I'll talk about that. And when we actually went over there for this field work, what we heard from the locals about some excavations, but there are no authentic reports available about that, because the locals provide informations which are contradictory, often colored by their own fancies. So it's very difficult to rely. But some of the narratives that we come across while interacting with the locals, so those narratives have some sort of significance for us. Now, this is actually part of the stone which is perhaps recovered from the site, might be by accident or might be by excavation. And now this is being kind of put over there on the way to the stairs to reach the top of the particular mound that we are talking about. Now, when we talk about the location of Garh Mandaran, I'm not going into the details that you are already acquainted with. This Garh Mandaran, it's in the Goghat 2 block, and this is nearby. The nearby town is Arambagh, and it's towards Midnapur west. So this particular place is at the border of Hooghly and Midnapur. Now, this place has a strategic importance. May not be now, but in the past, this place has a very important function as a place of strategic importance, and that's why in the early medieval history, we often come across this particular fortress of Garh Mandaran in various accounts. Now, this is what I have got from this historian Sudhir Kumar Mitra, and this name is believed to have been derived from the mythical Mandar tree. Now, what I personally inferred that this Mandar tree, that's a mythical tree, but such derivation could have been attributed to the variety of flora and the decorative gardens, because there also in the nearby area we came across a village which is called a village or a para of the village, which is called Malinitola. And this Malini Tola, it is associated with a Malini. There is a story of a Malini who was who used to supply flowers to the palace. So this Malini Tola, vendor of flowers. So this is something we actually come across, and also we have other sort of inferences to believe that this place had this sort of natural beauty, and there might be some beautiful gardens from which the name Mandaran has been derived. Now, when we talk about Mandaran, there is always this reference to the Shura dynasty. I'm just moving a little bit. Yes. So when we actually visit this temple, that is the Shoileshwar temple, which is now in the Kathali village near Garh Mandaran, there is this particular emblem, which is Shur Rajbongsher Kulo Devata, that is the family deity of the Shura dynasty. So, and also in the Durgesh Nandini, they are talking about this Shura dynasty. Now, when we have this history, when we try to look at the history of the Shura dynasty, then we find that this Tirumalai rock inscription of Rajendra Chola I, it mentions the name of Ranashura and also that is in the Ramacharita of Shandhakar Nandi, there is the mention of Lakshmi Shura, who are being described, being recorded as the rulers of Lakshmi Shura is being referred as the ruler of Apur Mandar in West Bengal. So Apur Mandar, this place definitely was actually perhaps being assumed as the earlier name of Garh Mandaran. And this Lakshmi Sura, when we look at this Tirumalai rock inscription, that is the 1025 AD. So that's the 11th century. And even we go back to that, because there is also the story of Adi Shura, which is associated with the Sura dynasty. Now, this legend of Adi Sura was considered as one of the rulers of the Sura dynasty, and he was associated with the legend, because there is the historians, they have divided over that, whether Adi Sura really existed or not, and whether the legends which are associated with Adi Shura really existed or not. But there was the legend associated with the 5 Brahmins who were actually brought by Adi Shura and to establish these Brahminism and the rituals and practices in proper. So, but these we get from this Punjika, or this, Kulo Punji, or this kind of family histories, which are not yet authenticated. But the thing is that if we even consider the Tirumalai rock inscription, which is an archaeological, very authentic archaeological evidence, then the history of this particular region, it went back to the 11th century and perhaps even beyond that, to 10th century, 11th century, something like that. And also this, in the Ramcharita of Shandhakar Nandi, there is the mention of Lakshmi Shura as the ruler of Apur Mandara, who is described as one of the chief feudatories of Rampal in the first half of 12th century AD. And also this Barakpur inscription of Vijay Sena, that records that Vilas Devi, the queen of Vijay Sena and the mother of Ballal Sena, belong to a Sura family. So these are the different references of this Sura dynasty that we come across, and the historians, they tried to connect these different Rana Shura, Lakshmi Sura, and those sort of they tried to connect this particular sort of different kings and to consider them as part of the same dynasty. Now, according to Ramcharit, uh, the Lakshmi Shura, the ruler of Apara Mandara, joined with Rampal in the 11th century to defeat the Kaivarta rebellion in the Borendrabhumi, that's the northern Bengal. Now, and he is also in the Ramacharita, he is being hailed as the provincial head of the forest region in Bengal, a region which was sort of dominated by forestry. That's the shloka, which is Sura iti aparamandara Madhusudan Shamasta Tabik Samanta Chakra Churamani Lakshmi Sura. So Lakshmi Sura as the Samanta Chakra Churamani. She is the head of those, landlords or the Samantas, the provincial rulers. And so there may not be, the Sura may not be a dynasty, so to say. They may not have a very huge empire or something like that, but they had played a very important role in the early medieval period, according to the account of the Ramacharita. Because the Rampal in the 11th century, he had to rely upon the support of Lakshmi Sura to defeat the Kaivartya rebels. Now, this is actually also important that in the 12th century, when we come to the 12th century, there is the also the evidence which we come across that this Chorganga dynasty of Orissa, that Anantavarman Choraganga, he extended his kingdom up to Midhunapur. Midhunapur is assumed to be Midnapur by historian Nihar Ranjan Roy, and defeated the Mandara king and destroyed his fortress Aramya. Aramya is being assumed as Arambagh by Nihar Ranjan Roy. Now, what I found that it's significant that this Arambagh, these two words actually contain the traces of these two particular different expressions. One is Aramya, another is Bagh. That is, the Aramya is the ancient name of this place as assumed by Nihar Ranjan Roy, and Bagh, that is the garden. So this reference to the beautiful gardens that might have been there. Later on, the Mughals, they named this place as Jahanabad, and Bagh, this word also has a Persian, this word is actually Persian. But the thing is that this reminiscent of the beautiful garden which might be there, or there might be some flowers in Garh Mandaran, which remained with the name of this particular place, Arambagh. And also there are these references that this Nagendranath Boshu, according to him, and also it is endorsed by Dipti Roy, that this place was considered as Bithuragarh. And this Bhitargarh, also Dipti Roy called this Bhitargarh. So something that what I found that this may suggest a very enclosed or protected place. And this place has a very geographical importance. Now, if we look at the history of Bengal, so during the turbulent time, we find that this Garh Mandaran appears to be at the end of Bengal, from where this, in the way through which the Bengal has actually sort of encountered invasions from Orissa and from southern dynasties. Whenever they tried to invade Bengal, they have particularly targeted Garh Mandar, because at that time, which is very nearby to the place, which was there was this place called Burshut, which has come from this particular expression Burish Sreshto, something like actually the place which was inhabited by the Shreshtis, or these merchants, wealthy merchants. And there is also this nearby Vishnupur. So all these places, it's something to this Garh Mandaran, I was talking about the strategic importance of the place, because if you have control over the fortress of Garh Mandaran, it would be easier to keep and watch on who is going to invade, or who was trying to enter Bengal through this Midnapur from the southern part. And secondly, this also is important because this is also is associated with the Shura dynasty, because this Bankura and Purulia district we find with the Jain accounts, and we also have so many archaeological evidences of the way the discovered Jain, the idols of the Jain Tirthankaras, the temples, Jain temples in Purulia and Bankura, and from there, and from those and West Midnapur districts. So this place has been referred in Jain accounts as the place of the aboriginals, who refused at first to pay respect to the Jain Tirthankaras. Later they got converted into that. So this is also a place where all these religious influences that also have trying to, we find the sort of, in this particular region, which is part of the Dokhinrari region. So we find that several influences, the Hindu influence, the Buddhist influence, the Jain influence, they're trying to synchronize in this particular area. So Garh Mandaran has this strategic as well as this cultural importance. So what we find, what we actually feel, that if a proper excavation would take place, then I think there is a possibility. So anyone who has a primary knowledge of archaeology is actually would agree with me that such kind of mound, which is unexplored. So there is definitely the possibility of the remains of the fortress, which seem to have been destroyed and revealed in several times, according to the accounts that we come across. And so also this Shoileshwar Jews, Dev. Now, this is something that is, there is this paradox that Bankim Chandra has talked about, that Sheto Borne Shivlingo, যখন মন্দিরে জগৎ সিংহ গেলেন তখন তিনি দেখলেন যে শ্বেত বর্ণের শিবলিঙ্গ রহিয়াছে, কিন্তু যে মন্দির আমরা এখন দেখছি, the particular temple which we see now, that is neither white nor marble, and it has a very kind of weird shape that I have noticed, this particular lingam. And perhaps the original temple has been destroyed and this has been revealed, as some of the historians have actually thought about this. And because this place could not be so far as it is now located, because it's not possible to come from Garh Mandaran to this place and readily go back over there, as Bimola has done in Durgesh Nandini. So there might be some older temple and which had been destroyed, and later it is being rebuilt. And there is another thing, that when we actually visited Garh Mandaran, we have heard about this narrative of the secret chamber, which actually connected this Garh Mandaran palace and the Shoileshwar temple. But such a long secret chamber, whether it is really feasible to build it at that time or not, that I don't know. But thing is that the locals still talk about the secret chambers, but it's something which is, it's not an exception, because wherever you go, the people talk about secret chambers, people talk about treasure, people talk about the secret passageways, dungeons, and all these things. People go on talking about that. But such secret chambers, we also have the accounts in Bankim's Durgesh Nandir about this Gupta Path, which is a secret chamber, which was an essential part of a royal palace. Even we have been shown a particular a particular, like a hole in that mound, which is being shown as the door passage, I mean the doorway to enter the secret chamber. I am not sure, I mean, whether it's true or not, and there were several difficulties to explore, but this particular story was there. So some of the remains of this legend that still exists, and those parts exists which are only part of the popular traditions. So they exist in different forms in this particular region. For example, the secret chamber. Now, when we come to the age of Sultanate, now there is another account. So this actually mentioned in the Madla Punj, this chronicler of the Jagannath Temple, that this, and also this is very important because the only sort of archaeological remains which is there in Garh Mandaran is actually the tomb of Ismail Ghazi, who was considered as the as one of the generals of Hussein Shah, and also but Sudhir Kumar Mitra, he considered him as a general of Rukunuddin Barabak Shah. So this Niti Sengupta, he has referred to this veteran Shah Ismail Ghazi, who actually started from the border fortress of Garh Mandaran, and he made a lightning raid through Orissa. But at that time, King Gajapati Prataprudra was not there in his capital. He went to the south. So they have taken advantage of that, and Ismail Ghazi has conquered Cuttack and Jajpur, and also he struck coins to celebrate the victory. But when Gajapati Rudra drove back the invaders and rested his territory up to Mandaran. So Mandaran is actually the point, which is sort of, we can say that is actually the line of control, I mean, the place where this the dynasty from the Orissa dynasty ends. I mean, Orissa dynasty and the Bengal Sultanate, they actually share border, and this Mandaran was actually the border at the time. But this Sudhir Kumar Mitra, he has given another account of the local legend, because in that local legend says that Ismail Ghazi defeated Gajapati. He did not mention Prataprudra, and built an earthen fortress, demolishing the formal metallic structure. উনি যেটা বলছেন যে what he said যে একটা পিতলের পিতলের দুর্গ ওখানে ছিল, মানে একটা brass fortress was there, but it's not really possible to make a fortress of brass, because might be, so I should presume that there might be a metallic structure which was demolished, and they built an earthen fortress, and that was built by Ismail Ghazi, and so that is still existing. And what is really important, that this Ismail Ghazi, he was transformed into a sort of holy man, a pig who was being worshipped by the locals. And also he is considered, I mean, as people, they offer sort of their homage to his tomb. And when we actually went to that place, there was a man, actually we didn't come across any professional guide. So that is something, I'm just stop sharing for a moment and coming back. So what I'm saying, that when we were actually visited that place, we didn't get any professional guide. And there was, I mean, I visited the place twice, in 2015, 2018. There was no guide who would guide us to the history of the place and all. We met a random local who was there at the time, and he told us the story of a fakir who had the magical power, and he could cross the Amodar river. It always, ওই গল্পটা আমাদের বলে যাচ্ছে যে ওই ফকির বাবা ছিল, ওই আমোদর নদী পেরিয়ে চলে যেত, and so all these stories, and how সেই ফকির তার how he transformed, he has given magical powers to his disciples, সেইটার ন্যারেটিভটার সঙ্গে মিল পাওয়া যাচ্ছে সুধীর কুমার মিত্র যখন বলছেন ওই একটা ফোঁটা রক্ত ওখানে পড়েছিল বলে সেখানে একটা টুম্ব তৈরি হয়েছে। কারণ দুটো টুম্বের, একটা হচ্ছে বাংলাদেশের রংপুর জেলায় আছে বলে ক্লেম করা হচ্ছে ইসমাইল গাজীর, আরেকটা হচ্ছে গড় মান্দারণে আছে বলে ক্লেম করা হচ্ছে। তাহলে একটা অ্যাজাম্পশন হচ্ছে যে একটা বডির দুটো পার্ট ওখানে আছে, আর একটা হচ্ছে দুটোই বিলিভ যে ওইখানে একটা ফোঁটা there is a drop of blood was dropped on that area, so that's why the tomb was built in commemoration of the sacrifice of Ismail Ghazi, who has reportedly been killed by the treachery of a local Hindu general, I mean another rival general of in that particular area. So এই যে mythগুলো, so what when we talk about the myths which are existing in that area, it is principally the myth of Ismail Ghazi which is existing in different forms. এখন যে লোকটা আমাদেরকে কথা বলছিল, পরে যখন আমি আমার একজন ছাত্র সে ওই অঞ্চলের বাসিন্দা, তাকে যখন আমরা জিজ্ঞেস করলাম তখন, এবং সে বলছে না না ও তো একটা পাগল লোক, ও যে আসে তাকে এসব গল্প টল্প বলে আর কি। তো বাট হোয়াট ইজ ভেরি সিগনিফিকেন্ট দ্যাট দিস ন্যারেটিভ has been endorsed by several others. Several people, they were talking about this, they have found treasure in a nearby place which was protected by the snakes, and they have found the silver coins, and they had been some of them are being acquired by the locals. The police took some of them. So these are various stories they are talking about. But what was I found these accounts interesting, that when we talk about the myths which had been generated and which are existing in that particular area, these are especially the myths which are related to Ismail Ghazi. The pre-Islamic myths, they hardly exist in the I mean, apart from this myth of Malinitola, that hardly existed in the mind of the locals, as we have come across during our field survey. Again, going back to that. Now, these are, okay. I think it is visible now. So these are the two pictures. The first one I have taken from Sudhir Kumar Mitro's book. That's the old Ismail Ghazi's tomb at Garh Mandaran. Now this is the reconstructed version, and one cannot go near this tree because there are several snakes which are there. So the locals asked us not to go near that, but we have visited the tomb. So this is now has been reconstructed, and so you could hardly understand the original structure which was there. So the thing is that while making a conservation of this particular site, this particular heritage structure has not properly been maintained. I mean, this is something which is something very unfortunate, that such kind of very modern structure has been built over there. Now, when we come to the Mughal era, there is this Aini Akbari. Abul Fazl mentioned Mandaran as a region in Bengal and its constituent districts were then Bardwan, Bishnupur, Bankura and West Hooghly. And headquarter of the Mandaran region was Garh Mandaran, according to the particular account, Aini Akbari by Abul Fazl. Now, what I have found that this an interesting point over there, that is the report of an earthquake on June 4, 1669, during the reign of Aurangzeb, which is being recorded by Bakhtwar Khan in his Mirati Alam, that has been referred in the particular journal. I'll just read from that. I'll read from this. I'm referring to, I have given reference. I'm not going into this right now. But just let me read this from the account that this, as recorded in Mirate Alam, it says that on the 14th of Muharram of the 20th regnal year of the exalted Aurangzeb, June 4, 1669, a violent earthquake shocked the area in the vicinity of the fort of Mandaron. Due to the intensity of the earthquake, there appeared a crack of 50 zira in length and 2 yards broad on the ground. The inhabitants tied stones to a rope of 5 and 600 years long to ascertain the depth of the crack. But the stones could not touch the bottom of the ground and the depth could not be ascertained. Apparently, the crack was more than 1800 inch deep. After a few days, without any apparent reason, the crack joined 800 feet deep, and after a few days, without any apparent reason, the crack joined together and topography of the land changed all of a sudden. Now, this is something which is important for us, because if we look at the mound, one of the possible reasons for the damage of the Arden fort, which was sort of believed to have been built by Ismail Ghazi, was actually finally destroyed or caused a very severe damage due to this particular earthquake, which took place on June 4, 1669. Now, but what is really important for us to consider, that in Ain-i-Akbari, which is one of the books on administrations written by Abul Fazl, and also in the Mirati Alam, which also, so such important administrative accounts, they also record the incidents of, say, for example, an earthquake in Garh Mandaran, the Mandaran, and especially the fort of Mandaran, and this place has repeatedly been mentioned. So we must say that before the colonial rule, in the pre-colonial area, Mandaran actually held its significance from, if we go back to this old Tirumala inscription, that is the 11th century till the 18th century. So 11th century to 18th century, from 700 to 800 years, there might be, we may go beyond, say, 11th century or even 10th century, may go beyond that. We are not yet sure what is there beneath the mound. So thing is that for almost 800 years, we get a stretch of history of 800 years in the pre-colonial period, in which Mandaran really held a very important strategic location for all the dynasties who have come to Bengal and who ruled over Bengal. So what we find that this in the colonial period, the colonizers, they deliberately ignored the area, because at that time this place Mandaran couldn't be considered as a person important, as an important trade route, and part of the important trade route, or as an important port, because they mostly concentrated on the banks of the river Hooghly. So this particular, in the colonial period, any attempt to restore the history of the place, so that was not properly made. And also, definitely in the post-colonial period, the historians like R.C. Mojumdar, Rakhaldas Bandopadhyay, Rakhaldas Bandopad in the colonial period, and also Dinesh Chandra Sen in his Brihad Bongo, and also Nihar Ranjan Rai, they have tried to find out, when they try to look at Garh Mandar, or when they have tried to restore the history of Garh Mandar on this part of Hooghly, what actually the problem was there. We have to rely upon the inscriptions and documents which are actually preserved without written by and preserved with the invaders, the people who invaded the land. For example, this Rajendra Chola's inscription. For example, these Chorganga inscriptions. So the dynasties which invaded Bengal, which tried to, I mean, those we have to rely upon them, because we don't have our documents, we don't have our archaeological evidence to construct our own history. So that was a problem. Now we will. I'll go fast. Now it's already 8:25. Now, this is when we actually went over there, according to the reports that I have come across. In 1961-62, there was an exploration, a partial excavations, and in Garh Mandaran, this is from Indian Archaeology, a review of 1961-62, that actually told us that there is that ruins of stone architecture on the mud ramparts of Garh Mandaran. So in the 1960s, perhaps an excavation, 1960s, an excavation was conducted, and they have got the ruins of stone architecture. And also there is Sudhir Kumar Mitra. He mentioned this archaeologist Prabhas Chandra Pal. He conducted an excavation, probably that is also in 1961-62, and discovered 4 copper points of the Mughal era. Now, when we actually went over there and met the locals, they talked about this place, which is on the southern part of the mound. And this place, it's very difficult to go over there, but there is something which is, there is some sort of excavation বা আমরা খোঁড়াখুঁড়ি যাই হোক না কেন মানে হয়েছিল এরকম একটা মনে হয়। এরা বলছে যে কিছুদিন আগে এক্সকাভেশন হয়েছিল এবং ওখান থেকে দে হ্যাভ রিকভার্ড ক্যানন বলস এন্ড সো, কিন্তু এটার কোনো অথেন্টিক ডকুমেন্টেশন হচ্ছে মানে আমি আর আমার কলিগ গিয়েছিলাম, আমরা খুঁজে পাইনি। তেমনি এই জায়গাটা দেখানো হয়েছে, ওই যে আগের যে জায়গাটা আমরা দেখলাম বাদিকের জায়গাটা, মানে সেপ্টেম্বর মাসে কিন্তু গড় মান্দারণের মানে ওই মাউন্টটা একদম, যেটার উপরে আপনার ওই ইসমাইল গাজীর ইয়েটা টুম্ব আছে এবং আরেকটা ওয়াচ টাওয়ারের মতো করা হয়েছে, এবং ওপরে ওই মাঠের মতো একটা জায়গা আছে, একটা কিছুটা প্লেন ল্যান্ড আছে যেখানে লোকজন বসে গল্প টল্প করে। সেইগুলো বাদ দিলে কিন্তু গড় মান্দারণের মাউন্টের আশপাশের জায়গাগুলো, ঢিবির আশেপাশের জায়গাগুলো কিন্তু সেপ্টেম্বর মাসে এইরকম অবস্থায় ছিল আর কি। হ্যাঁ, যেটা শীতকালে পরিষ্কার হয়, শীতকালে অনেকটাই পরিষ্কার করা হয়, কিন্তু ওই সময় এরকম একটা জঙ্গলের মতো অবস্থা হয় এবং আমাদের উই হ্যাভ টু বিট অ্যারাউন্ড দ্য বুশ, মানে ওই জায়গাটায় যেতে আমাদের মানে মাটিতে আর কি লাঠির আওয়াজ করতে করতে যেতে হচ্ছে, সাপটা না বেরোয় আর কি। সো উই আর ভেরি অ্যাফ্রেড অফ দ্যাট। So this is actually the place where some excavations might have taken place, according to some of the locals, as they're saying. This is something they have repeatedly shown us, as this is the doorway to the secret chamber now being closed. So এইটা হচ্ছে ব্যাপার। Now this is actually the remains of the walls, the boundary walls, and এরপরে হচ্ছে আমোদর রিভারটা আছে। এই বাউন্ডারি ওয়ালসটা মূল যে প্যালেসটা, the principal remain mound of the Mandaran, so it is something surrounded by this particular wall. যদিও এটার যে অরিজিনাল বাউন্ডারিটা অনেকটা আগে থেকে শুরু হচ্ছে বলা হচ্ছে, যে টোটাল যদি ফোর্ট্রেসটা আমরা ধরি, কিন্তু যে মূল এটা পারহ্যাপস দিস দ্য প্যালেস যেটা আছে মাউন্টটা, তো তার আশপাশে এই দেওয়ালটা ছিল, যেটার নিচের পার্টটাকে বলা হচ্ছে মেড অফ স্টোন, উপরের পার্টটা হচ্ছে মাটি দিয়ে। সো পারহ্যাপস এই যে দের ইজ দিস constant history of destruction and rebuilding of Garh Mandaran, সেই লেয়ার গুলো কিন্তু পাওয়া সম্ভব যদি হচ্ছে এক্সকাভেশন হয়। যদি এক্সকাভেশন হওয়াটা খুব ডিফিকাল্ট, কিন্তু পার্শিয়ালিও যদি কিছু করা সম্ভব হয়, তাহলে কিন্তু মানে আমার পার্সোনাল ধারণা যে ওখানে এক্সকাভেশন গুলো হতে পারে। Now I'll end my discussion with this particular thing, that this Malini Tola, which we actually visited. Now এইটা হচ্ছে দিস প্লেস, এটা মোটামুটি গড় মান্দারণ থেকে ইটস নিয়ারলি হাফ কিলোমিটার or 1 kilometer from the palace. Now this place is in the midst of the field, একদম ধান ক্ষেতের মধ্যে এরকম একটা জায়গা যেখানে এই জিনিসটা রাখা আছে। এই স্টোনটা দেখে এখানে ছবিতে হয়তো ইটস মে নট বি দ্যাট ক্লিয়ার, কিন্তু আমার যখন স্টোনটা আমি দেখলাম, এটা অ্যাকচুয়ালি স্ট্রাইকস মি অ্যাজ আ পার্ট অফ স্টোন স্ট্রাকচার আর কি, মানে এমনি কোনো সাধারণ একটা পাথর এনে বসিয়ে দেওয়া হয়েছে এরকম কিন্তু নয়। এটা কোনো একটা মানে প্যালেসের একটা পার্ট বলে আমার মনে হচ্ছে, কোনো একটা স্ট্রাকচার তার একটা পার্ট বলে আমার মনে হয়েছে। তো there is actually a myth that this Malini was cursed, and so the water, even during the flood, never touches this particular stone. Now, if the water would touch this stone, she would be redeemed of this particular curse. So এই মিথটা কিন্তু মানে আমি এখানে দেখেছি যে sort of whether Ahalya revisited. So how these traditional myths have been localized, and so there might be some kind of connections between these flower vendor or the palace in some time during in course of the history of Garh Mandaran. But this particular place, it has generated such small and localized versions of the established myths. I think we need to work on that, because I mean that might reveal some very sort of striking information regarding Garh Mandaran. So along with excavations, archaeological excavations, which has to be conducted in the adjacent area, which needs to be conducted in order to find out, because Hooghly has, I mean, it's actually a treasure trove, because we found that several things have been discovered, but nowhere the excavation has properly been done. Say, for example, Mohanad, Darbashini, or Bhandarhati, so several places. Some idols have been unearthed, and so these things happened. We came across the reports, but the proper excavation that has hardly been done in these areas. So I think we need to really focus on the proper archaeological excavations by the trained archaeologists, by ASI or the state archaeology department. And so something like this, I am not aware of how it looks in 2020, but what I have seen, that is in 2015. So that was the situation, the watchtower. So something like that, when you actually visit the place, you really don't have the sense of history. That was the problem. You are visiting a place, you are actually walking upon a particular space, which was the sort of center of our cultural heritage, our cultural history, but we are actually looking at this as an entertainment park. And that was also, I made a sort of I keep on making small surveys among the people over there, but I found it's hardly people are aware of this history. So that is something I think this such endeavors, such initiatives taken by INTACH will definitely make things, I mean, will just help us to bring back the history. Now, this actually acknowledgement, I must thank INTACH Hooghly Chapter, Tormoy Pandit. He is assistant professor of English, one of my colleagues who actually went over there with me. We had actually sort of made that adventure over there. এবং সেই মাঝখানে মাঝখানে আমাদের ওই মালনীতলা ওইগুলো যেতে গিয়ে সেই কাদার মধ্যে দিয়ে ধান ক্ষেতের মধ্যে দিয়ে নেমে পা অব্দি কাদায় ডুবে গেছে, তার মধ্যে দিয়ে যেতে হয়েছে। সো হি অলসো ওয়েন্ট উইথ মি অ্যান্ড রিয়েলি হেল্প মি আ লট। To my sister, Mrs. Riporna Amin, and definitely Antaradi Ramanusda, তো obviously আমি মানে কতটা খারাপ বলেছি সেটা আমি জানি, কিন্তু আমাকে বলার জন্য মানে I should express my gratitude to both of you, and also all the members of INTACH and all the listeners, all the audience present today. To Mr. Priyanku Chakraborty, also helped me with some information, and two of my students, Shonali Kormokar and Moinul Hossein, who were actually the local inhabitants and who actually helped me in the particular sort of field work. And when we actually visited different places, when we talked to the people, they actually helped me to do that in 2018. And so finally, I'd like to thank you for, listening to the presentation for such a long time. And I hope that this initiative by INTACH will definitely bring back the history that we have already lost. And that is perhaps we will be able to recover in course of time when we'll be conscious of our tradition, our heritage, our past, which was so precious to us and which should not be lost. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Shubham. I mean, it was indeed a very enriching session. So before I continue any further, I just ask if I'm audible and visible to you all here. If someone can just respond.
Yeah,
Yes, you are.
yeah,
Sure.
you're audible, you're
Yes, you are.
visible, huh?
Thank you very much. So it was indeed a very wonderful session, uh, and we could actually, those of us who listened to it, and we were so engrossed with this entire thing. And you started off with a quote by Michel Foucault, and we could actually relate to how you were actually focused on the multiplicities of history, or the multiple histories which very often remain, which very often do not fit into a very homogeneous dominant form of historical narratives. And then you went on to basically understand and define the questions of how we can develop a sense of history through a study of Garh Mandaran. And you talked about the problems, about the disassociation between history and the place, and you wanted to recover that. You went back through your research, the extensive ethnographic and archival research that you conducted in order to make this thing possible. I think it was a very enriching experience for us as you went down. You brought before us the local histories of these places, and how very often in the ways of writing dominant histories or dominant narratives, as colonial history is often done, it has subsumed or it has suppressed various pre-colonial historical narratives of various places, and in a sense we have lost the multiple histories or the multiplicity of Bengal's history in various forms. So thank you very much, Professor Amin, for that wonderful talk. Now, there are indeed a couple of questions, but before I go to those questions, I have a personal question of my own which I would like to ask you, and it's more methodological than contextual. The question that I would like to ask is, you conducted you said that you spoke with the people, you conducted your surveys, and you must have also conducted some sort of archival research. So what sort of, and we all know, those of us who conduct ethnographic research, we all know the kind of problems that we might face as ethnographers. As we go to a particular space, if you're not acquainted with a group of people, the amount of time that is required in getting acquainted with the space, acquainted with the people. So if you could tell us a little about your experience of getting acquainted with the local people of those areas, and also the kind of archival documents. I mean, not colonial archives, obviously, but if colonial or pre-colonial archival documents that you may have come across, and the challenges that you have faced in conducting ethnographic research in the process.
Yeah, so thank you for your question. The thing is that first of all, that I have read this Ramacharita part of that I have read myself. For I mean, when I came across this particular text from the secondary sources, and also the thing is that that when we actually went over there, right? This is something which is really very an experience to be remembered, because first of all, when we actually went over there, we didn't find anyone to talk to. I mean, what will we talk about? I mean, who will talk to us? Who will let us know about this particular space? When first time in 2015, when I, with my colleague, Tonmoy, we went over there because both of us were outsiders. We do not live over there. We never lived over there at the time. So we were not really aware, and we, came to that college recently and recently joined at the time. So we were not really aware whom to talk to about that. So when we first talked to a person, so who kept on talking about all these narratives, And first of all, that when I asked about that whether there is anything matir tola theke kichu pawa geche kina, whether anything has been unearthed or anything has been preserved in the site, or can you show me anything which is related to the fort, the local people, they were really, I mean, baffled by these questions. That really, was there anything like that which existed at the time? And when we actually went Malinitola, we had to ask several people about that. So the first problem is that when you ask such questions, people became skeptical. ঠিক আছে, মালিনীতলা বলে যে জায়গাটার কথা বলছি, সেই জায়গাটা ওরা মানে বেশ একটু প্রোটেক্ট করে রেখে দিয়েছে আর কি। তো এবং ওইরকম একজন মানে শহরের লোক, তারা কাদা ভেঙে জল ভেঙে ওই জায়গাটায় যাবে, মানে দ্যাট অ্যাপিয়ার্স টু ভেরি স্ট্রেঞ্জ। আই মিন, ওয়াই ডু ইউ ওয়ান্ট টু গো ওভার দেয়ার, ওইখানে কি করতে যাবেন আর কি। সো দ্যাট ওয়াজ দ্য থিং, or this thing that whenever we are trying to move around in Garh Mandaran, this I mean, this a practical thing is that this area, there is such a kind of I mean, such a growth of vegetation, এবং মানে লোকে বলছে ওদিকে যাবেন না, ওদিকে সাপের ভয়, এদিকে যাবেন না, এদিকে সাপের ভয়। So that was the problem, that if we want to make a field survey, I have done that in other places. For example, in Odisha, when I went to this Udaygiri complex, which is there in the Jajpur district, this Udaygiri, Ratnagiri, Lolitgiri, Pushpagiri. So these are the diamond rectangle over there. So when I went to Lolitgiri, Udaygiri archaeological site, which was not yet rebuilt, but there is the work is going on. But what we find that at least the area is clean. I mean, not like that. You can go and find, you can look at the structures, you can go nearby, although there is no one else, no guide, no one else, there is only one guard, but I think at least you could go. But this is something which is very difficult to go, I mean, difficult to move around even in this place. তো সেইটা একটা প্রবলেম। আর দ্বিতীয়ত হচ্ছে মান্দারনের জায়গাতে, সেখান থেকে আপনার পক্ষে এই ন্যারেটিভ গুলো কালেক্ট করাটা সমস্যার জায়গা, কারণ বেশিরভাগ লোকে সেই সময়ের যে কাস্টম গুলো, সেই রকম লোকাল কাস্টম অনেক জায়গায় অনেক ফর্মে থাকে, কিন্তু মান্দারনের ক্ষেত্রে আমরা কোনো লোকাল কাস্টমের কথা দেখতে পাচ্ছি না। মানে আমরা সুধীর কুমার মিত্রের বইতে সেখানে একটা কীর্তন গানের কথা পাচ্ছি আর কি, কিন্তু সেটা 1960-এ তখনই সুধীর কুমার মিত্র বলছেন যে সেই কীর্তন গানের ট্র্যাডিশনটা ইট হ্যাজ অলরেডি বিন, আই মিন, সেটা বিলুপ্ত হয়ে গেছে। তাহলে সেই ট্র্যাডিশন গুলো আপনি পাবেন কোত্থেকে? মানে সেই ন্যারেটিভ গুলো পাওয়ার জন্য যে ধরনের কাজ দরকার বা যে ধরনের ফিল্ড স্টাডি দরকার, সেটা আরো বেশি সময় সাপেক্ষ। আর সেটাই মনে হয়েছে যে আরো অনেকটা সময় নিয়ে করতে পারলে দ্যাট কুড হ্যাভ বিন মাচ বেটার।
Thank you very much for your response. We do have a few questions. The first one is from, it's more like a comment input by Shulogna Chakraborty. She said, খুব ভালো লাগছে, আমরা যদি আমাদের নদীর পেলিও চ্যানেল মরফোলজি ও তাদের গ্রেডিয়েন্ট বার করি, তাহলে নতুন ইতিহাস বেরোবে খানিকটা। আপনি বললেন ভূমিকম্প হয়ে টোপোগ্রাফি পরিবর্তন হয়েছে।
এটা মানে this is very important. আমি জাস্ট এক মিনিট বলে দিই আপনাকে, সেটা হচ্ছে এটা মানে আমি বলছি না, this is actually Mirate Alam that record where this I mean the earthquake was recorded, তা সেখানে কিন্তু এটা বলে দেয়া হচ্ছে যে তারা সেখানে উনি লিখছেন, বখতওয়ার খান যিনি মিরাটে আলম লিখছেন, উনি লিখছেন, আমি বলতে কোট করলাম ওই জন্য একদম সরাসরি পড়লাম, যে উনি বলছেন যে ওই অঞ্চলের ভূমির চরিত্র এবং ওই উচ্চতা কিছুটা চেঞ্জ হয়েছে। এখন ভূমির চরিত্র, whether the nature of the topography has changed or whether the mound has changed its structure or might have been damaged, সেইটা তো এইখান থেকে অত পরিষ্কারভাবে বোঝা যাচ্ছে না, কিন্তু might be a possibility of the change of topography. এটা সুলগ্না চক্রবর্তী খুব ইম্পর্টেন্ট একটা কথা বলেছে।
Thank you. We'll quickly move on to the next question. It's by Subhas Sen. What was the relation between the fort and the local people?
This relation means, I mean, if we talk about the previous, I mean, the previous, I mean, if we talk about history, think that this Shura dynasty, they have actually sort of, they tried to, if we consider the myth of Adisura, then this Shura dynasty, they have tried to revitalize the Brahmanism, or to establish the form of Brahmanism which is established in the area. But local people, whether they really, had very sort of cordial relationship with the ruler or not, so that was a question. Because whenever the fort had been invaded, the fort had been conquered. সো রাজা প্রতিটা যুদ্ধে হেরে যাচ্ছেন, মানে শুধুমাত্র রাজার দুর্বলতা কিন্তু নয়, আরেকটা খুব ইম্পর্টেন্ট ফ্যাক্টর হচ্ছে রাজার সঙ্গে লোকাল সাপোর্টটা আছে কিনা। সেক্ষেত্রে সুর ডাইনেস্টি যারা, তাদের সঙ্গে ওই অঞ্চলের ও তাদের প্রতি ওই অঞ্চলের লোকাল সাপোর্ট ছিল কিনা, সেইটা কিন্তু খুব একটা পরিষ্কার নয়। এটা হচ্ছে ইতিহাস আমার যেটা মনে হয়েছে, যে বারবারই ডাইনেস্টি যেই আক্রমণ করছে এরা হেরে যাচ্ছে, যেই আক্রমণ করছে এরা হেরে যাচ্ছে, এবং ওই মানে ফোর্টটা একবার করে ভাঙা হচ্ছে, আবার রিবিল্ড হচ্ছে, সবাই একবার করে তৈরি করছে। শেষের আর্ডেন স্ট্রাকচার বলে সেই স্ট্রাকচারটা মানে নড়বড়ে, সব থেকে নড়বড়ে স্ট্রাকচার। তার আগে নিশ্চয়ই হচ্ছে যে দ্য প্রপার ফোর্ট ওখানে ছিল। তো আর এখনকার রিলেশনশিপ বলতে গেলে সত্যি পিপল আর নট অ্যাওয়্যার অফ অল দিস, এগুলো তো বটেই। এমনকি দুর্গেশ নন্দিনী উপন্যাসটাও যে আছে, সেখানে যে গড় মান্দারনের কথা আছে, সেটাও মানে ওখানকার লোকজনের সত্যি অনেক বেশিরভাগেরই, মানে আমি যতজনের সঙ্গে কথা বলেছি, আমি অবভিয়াসলি আই ক্যানট সে অ্যাবাউট এভরিওয়ান ওভার দেয়ার, বাট পিপল আই টকড অ্যাবাউট, majority of them said we don't know about it, we only have heard something, like কোন একটা নভেল ছিল, কিছু একটা ছিল, but things and stuff like that.
Okay. So the next question is from Debanjan Mitro. It's an extensive question. I'll just read it out. In the excavation conducted under the supervision of Amol Roy, Calcutta University, in 2009, reported in the 2010-11 IAR, the team has reported an extensive excavation of 21 trenches, 6 by 6 meters, with an average occupational deposit of 4.5 meters. However, they have cited that the three-phase stratigraphical layers, which according to relative dating spans from 10th to 17th century, signify only a single cultural system. Do you think there has been an oversimplification of data analysis? What is your observation?
This very thank you, Debanjano, for this question. This is indeed perhaps I didn't get this data. That's my problem, and perhaps this is the excavation that the locals have referred by Mr. Amol Roy, Calcutta University, 2009, because they are talking about some excavations few years back. এবং দ্যাট এক্সকাভেশন টুক প্লেস, যে জায়গাটা সেটা হয়েছিল, তাহলে আমি যদি লোকাল ন্যারেটিভটাকে আমি যদি ধরে নিই, যে মানে যেহেতু এখন অথেন্টিকেটেড হচ্ছে যে জায়গাগুলো, সেটা হচ্ছে ওই মানে সাদার্ন পার্টটার কিছু কিছু জায়গায় মানে এক্সকাভেশন হয়েছে। একটা ওয়ান অফ দ্য প্রবলেমস অফ এক্সকাভেশন, সেটা হচ্ছে ওই যেহেতু উপরে ওই বাউন্ডের উপরে ওই আপনার টুমটা আছে, সুতরাং ওই জায়গাটা এক্সকাভেশনে কতগুলো প্রবলেম হতে পারে, সেটা একটা আর্কিওলজিক্যাল রিমেন। সেটাকে তো মানে আমরা জানি যে আমাদের নিয়ম অনুযায়ী কোনো একটা স্ট্রাকচারের কোনোভাবে ক্ষতি না করে আমাদের এক্সকাভেশন করতে হয়, বা আর্কিওলজিস্টরা যেভাবে এক্সকাভেশন করেন, যে একটা স্টেজে কোনো একটা স্টেজকে কিন্তু ভাঙা যাবে না, এক্সিস্টিং স্টেজকে না ভেঙে যত অবধি পাওয়া যাচ্ছে তত অবধি করতে হবে। তো সেইভাবে একটা প্রবলেম ছিল, সেই জন্য যে এক্সকাভেশনটা হয়েছে, লোকালসরা যে জায়গাগুলো দেখাচ্ছে, সেটা একটা পার্ট হচ্ছে ওই ওয়ালটার কাছে, ওয়ালটা মানে ধার ধরে কতগুলো জায়গায় এক্সকাভেশন হচ্ছে, আর ওই সাদার্ন পার্টটাতে মানে মাউন্টের নিচের বাঁদিকের একটা জঙ্গল মতো জায়গা, সেই জায়গাটা এক্সকাভেশন হয়েছিল। এখন দেখুন, আমি তো আর্কিওলজিক্যাল এক্সপার্ট নই, সেটা মানে এটা দাবি করাটা মানে অতিরিক্ত বাড়াবাড়ি হবে। এটা আর্কিওলজিস্টরা তারা বলছেন সিঙ্গল কালচারাল সিস্টেমের কথা। এখন হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ, না আয়রন স্মেল্টিং প্র্যাকটিসেস ইন দ্য লোকালিটিস এটা পাইনি, সেভাবে আমি দেখিনি। মানে ওইখানকার যারা তাদের বেশিরভাগেরই অকুপেশনাল যদি দেখি, তাহলে আয়রন মেল্টিং প্র্যাকটিস কিন্তু লোকাল এরিয়াতে আমি দেখিনি আর কি, মানে আমি যতটা দেখতে পেয়েছি ওখানে ওখানে মানে অন্যান্য কাজকর্ম লোকে করে আর কি, এবং এই ধরনের প্র্যাকটিস কিছু দেখিনি। হ্যাঁ, এবার যেটা আপনি বলছেন যে এই যে সিগনিফাইংলি সিঙ্গল কালচারাল সিস্টেম, কিন্তু সেটা আমরা যে এপিগ্রাফিক এভিডেন্সেস গুলো পাচ্ছি বা এভিডেন্সেস গুলো আমরা যেগুলো দেখলাম, যে যে বারবার মানে শুধুমাত্র রিবিল্ড এর কথা হচ্ছে না, তার মেটেরিয়ালটারও চেঞ্জের কথা বলা হচ্ছে। এখন এই মেটেরিয়াল চেঞ্জটার কথা যখন বলে হচ্ছে, আমরা যদি সেটাকে লিটারালি না নিয়ে মেটাফরিক্যালি নিই, সত্যি মানে পিতলের দুর্গ কি সম্ভব? সত্যি সেটা সম্ভব না, কিন্তু সেখান থেকে একবার স্টোন স্ট্রাকচার, একবার আর্থ এন্ড মাড স্ট্রাকচার, একবার হচ্ছে যে ব্রাস স্ট্রাকচার, মেটালিক স্ট্রাকচার, এই যে আলাদা আলাদা স্ট্রাকচারের কথা যখন বলা হচ্ছে, তাহলে সেখানেই তো হচ্ছে যে সিঙ্গল কালচারাল সিস্টেমের বিষয়টা হচ্ছে যে সিঙ্গল কালচারাল সিস্টেমের ব্যাপারটা হচ্ছে ডিনাইড হয়। এটা মানে আমি ঠিক মানে ওনারা কিভাবে দেখেছেন বুঝতে পারলাম, মানে আমি ঠিক এটার সঙ্গে মানে বুঝতে পারলাম না যে কিভাবে এটা রিলেট করা সম্ভব।
The next question is from Orijit Shorkar. Had it not been strategically significant a location, do you think, sir, the place would have gained so many layers of richness in terms of heritage? Meaning, how important were the other factors like rivers, the religions? I think there's some typo.
Uh,
Very interesting to learn that this was the administrative center for places including Bakura, Burdwan. So, would an excavation help, or will the dominant viewpoints reinforce themselves?
Yeah, I was talking about the strategic importance because I say of two adjacent cities. One is Burisresht, that is Burshut, and so this Burshut, they have this dynasty, and which is followed by the Burdwan, reportedly followed by the Burdwan dynasty. So this place is a strategic importance, I said, because there was this what should I say, this, I mean, this is actually strategically considered as the watchtower, because if you have a base in Garh Mandaran, you can have a watch on who are possibly going to invade. Because if Midnapur was under the Orissa dynasty, the Chorgongo dynasty, so it's possible that they're trying to invade that particular area, and when you are trying to stop, you are keeping a constant watch on them. So in that way, it is strategically important. And also this Garh Mandaran fort, which was considered one of the three forts mentioned over there. So this, you could have a control over this Saraswati, that region, I mean that trade route, and also you could control Burshut, which is a part of that, perhaps also exists in the name Dihi Burshut. So because that area was perhaps in the early Middle Age or in the later medieval age could have been considered as a place which was inhabited by the rich merchants and therefore was actually a source of revenue. So in order to control that particular area, it's very important to have their base, strategic, their military base. If we consider Garh Mandaran as the military base of the dynasties who ruled over there, so this particular strategic base, you have a military base over there, and so you could control the whole region on the one hand, which actually your revenue earning spaces on the one hand, and on the other hand, you can also have a watch that who is going to invade your area from from the southern region, that's from Orissa or from the southern states. So you could have a sort of watch on both of these things, militarily and also for economic reasons, to have economic control over that particular region. সেই কারণে আমি বলেছি যে এটা স্ট্র্যাটেজিক্যালি ইম্পর্টেন্ট বলে আমার ব্যক্তিগত মনে হচ্ছে, এবং সেই জন্য কিন্তু বারবার এই গড় মান্দারণে এসে সমস্ত ইনভেশন গুলো হচ্ছে, যে সবাই আসছে গড় মান্দারণ অব্দি আসছে আবার ফেরত যাচ্ছে, গড় মান্দারণটা জিতে নিচ্ছে আবার ফেরত যাচ্ছে। কারণ গড় মান্দারণটা খুব মানে বারবার হচ্ছে ইনভেডেড হচ্ছে, একদিক দিয়ে রুলাররা খুব একটা নয় আর কি, সেই কারণে বারবার হেরে যাচ্ছে, কিন্তু ওই জায়গাটার উপরে সবাই কন্ট্রোল রাখতে চাইছে। হ্যাঁ, এই জিনিসটা কিন্তু মানে আমার ব্যক্তিগত মনে হয়েছে আর কি অ্যানালিসিস, যদিও মানে আমি কোনো অ্যাকাউন্টে পেলাম না যে স্ট্র্যাটেজিক ইম্পর্টেন্সের জায়গা বলা হয়েছে, কিন্তু আমি যে অ্যাকাউন্টগুলো পড়লাম সেটা থেকে আমার ব্যক্তিগতভাবে ইনফার করেছি যে এইটা স্ট্র্যাটেজিক্যালি এটার একটা ইম্পর্টেন্স হতে পারে এই 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 যে দক্ষিণ রাঢ়ী যে অঞ্চলটা, সেই অঞ্চলটার উপর কন্ট্রোল করার জন্য।
Thank you very much. I would also like to take the opportunity to thank the West Bengal Heritage Commission that has joined us for this enriching talk, and they've also acknowledged that excavation is needed to unearth history of Garh Mandaran, and they've thanked Professor Amin for sharing his information on the place. So I will just check if there is any other question from. Okay, Joydeep Bhattacharya has said, Shubham, this reminds me of the archaeological neglect to the Guasanimari site in Kuch Bihar, another treasure house of history unexplored. So that's a comment
I
from.
also even say, I mean, since West Bengal Heritage Commission is there, I must mention Mughal Buddhist Vihara, which is very in a miserable condition. You really need to protect that Mughal Buddhist Vihara. I mean, something like I feel very, I mean, it's very unfortunate even on my part when I see that it is not being properly protected. Something like open and all these kind of all these architectural, I mean, excavated places, all these kinds of what I say, those stucco architecture, stucco structures which are being unearthed are kept open. So something which is really not expected.
It seems there is okay. There is one question from. Do we, Antoradi? Do we have time for another question, or should we call it a day? There's one question from Debanjan. Should we
Yeah,
just take that?
let's take the Manjan's question and then we'll wrap up the session.
Sure. So Debanjan's question is: the ceramic assemblage of phase 2 and 3 of the site reflects a high dominance of deep vessels, which are generally coarse and having thick cross section, indicating a practice of storage of materials. Such a dominance of deep vessels in an agriculturally rich region generally indicate a trade relationship, trade center. Have your studies reflected anything of that sort? Maybe connection with Buddhist trade networks too in the pre-Islamic period?
Regarding the Buddhist trade network, I'm not sure, but there is the temple of Swarup Narayan that is being described by Sudhir Kumar Mitra as having the Buddhist influences as the temple of Dharma Thakur, because I mean they have this particular tradition of holding have a ceremony of the chariots on the day of the Vijayadashami of the Durga Puja. And also they offer, this kind of the structure of this kurmo, which is often associated with the Buddhist sort of tradition. So there might have been some Buddhist influences, as I personally thought, because in Purulia and Bankura also we have Jain influences, several Jain sculptures. And if we go to Darbashini, say in Horipal also, there are several Buddhist statues from Buddhist the statues of Goddess Tara, Obolipiteshwar, also they are being unearthed and excavated from those sites. So there is a possibility of the Buddhist influence over there also. And regarding these local temples, they might have some sort of influences.
Thank you very much, Professor Amin. We really, on behalf of INTACH Hooghly, thank you from the core of our hearts for making this session so interesting, so enriching. I hope all of you have had such an enriching experience, and I would like to thank all our viewers who have joined and who have patiently been with us for the last 1.5 hours. It is really a fantastic session, and we really thank you all. And a special thanks again to Professor Amin for being with us and delivering this extremely enriching session. I would also like to take this opportunity to mention that And the next session, which is happening on the 4th of October from 8 p.m., we have another very fantastic, very fantastic and very interesting lecture by Sri Partho Chattopadhyay, গবেষক, প্রাবন্ধিক, কবি ও অধ্যাপক, and he will be delivering a lecture, as you can see on your screens, on the topic Hooghly Jelar Noushilp, the naval industry of district of Hooghly, ইতিহাস ও লোক সংস্কৃতির প্রেক্ষিতে, in the context of history and culture. So we would like to invite you all, and we hope you all will be present for the next session, which is happening on the 4th of October. It will really be a learning experience for all of us, the same way we did today. And we really thank you for being with us, and we hope you shall join us again in the next session on the 4th of October. Thank you very much.